Welcome to ChessStrategiesBlog.com. This video is going to be about check, the rules for check, and a couple of related matters like double check and discovered check. Let's get started. This video is about check. What are the rules about check in chess? I've set up this position. It's a somewhat phony position. It's not completely unrealistic, but I wanted to set up a position that would show as many different possibilities for giving check as I could come up with. And let's just go through one at a time and show the different ways that the black king, this poor black king, is going to be subjected to all kinds of different checks. We'll start with the knight. The knight here at d5 can give check to the king by moving to c7. The way that check works is that any time that a piece could capture the enemy king, then the king is said to be in check. Here the knight could move up 1 and over 2 and capture the black king. Therefore the king is in check to the white knight. This queen can give check a couple different ways. Here's one way, moving up to c6 and checking on the diagonal. The pawn at f6 can give check. You see the pawn capturing diagonally could capture the black king. This incidentally is a good example of a pawn fork, where the pawn could gives check to the king and would be able to capture the queen if the queen stayed still. Here the bishop gives check on the diagonal. Here the rook gives check along the file. And here's another queen check. I wanted to show you this one to show you all the different ways that the king can get out of check. First of all, the king could move out of check. He could move to f7, say, or the check might be blocked. There's a couple different ways to block the check. This knight might move to e5 and block the check from the queen. This queen might move to e6 to block the check. We call that interposition, when a piece interposes between the king and the checking piece. So the knight can interpose at e7 or e5. The queen can interpose at e6. And the third way that a check can be handled is that the checking piece can be captured. In this case, bishop at a5 captures at e1, and that eliminates the check. We might ask, could the king castle out of check? Here the king, there's no pieces between the king and the rook, so the king might castle in ordinary circumstances, but the rules say that the king may not castle out of check. So castling to the queen side would not be a legal move here, even though it might be otherwise allowed. There are two things that I should mention about check. First of all, you must get out of check if you can. If you're in check and you can't get out of check, then that's the end of the game. You're checkmated. And I'll have more about checkmate in the next video. So you must move out of check if you can, and you may not move into check. Let's take a look at this position. Here the king, the black king, would like to be able to help his pawn to get to the queening square. And white, of course, would like to prevent that. Could black move his king from e4 to e3 and give check to the white king? Well, no. The king can't give check to the enemy king because he would also be moving into check. If the black king moved to e3, the white king could capture the black king before the black king could capture the white king. So a king cannot give check to the other king. And let's take this final example to show discovered check and double check. And I'm going to use a particular kind of checkmate that is well known. This is called a smothered mate, and it's quite pretty. It begins with white moving his queen to d5 check. Now the black king has two different ways he could get out of check. He could move his rook to f7 to block the check, to interpose. But if that happened, white would play queen takes rook check, the king would move into the corner, and then queen to f8 would be checkmate. So black doesn't want to do that. Black moves his king into the corner. Now white plays knight to f7 check. Now again, black has an alternative. He could play rook captures the knight on f7, but if black did that, white would play queen to d8 check. The black queen would interpose, queen takes queen check, the rook interposes, queen takes rook checkmate. And black sees all that and doesn't like it, so rather than capturing the knight here, moves his king to g8. Now comes the discovered check, and it also is a double check. The knight moves to h6, discovering check against the king from the queen. Notice how the knight previously blocked the check from the queen against the king, and by moving it discovers the check. That's called a discovered check. And as it happens in this case, it's also a double check because the knight delivers check to the king from h6. Now when there's a double check, the only way to get out of double check is to move the king. So the king must move. And now comes a very pretty little combination. The queen moves to g8 check. The king can't capture the queen because it's guarded by the knight. The rook must capture, and now the knight delivers the smothered mate on f7. The king is physically blocked from moving by his own pieces, and the check from the knight gives checkmate. Well, I hope you've learned something about check and even a little bit about checkmate. Be sure to visit my blog, chessstrategiesblog.com, and subscribe to my YouTube videos. We'll talk again soon. More about checkmate.